Here's something that might surprise you. Right now, in your kitchen cupboard, there are probably items you've already thrown away or are about to throw away that are completely fine to use. Perfectly stable salt vinegar that could outlast your car. You tossed them because of a date stamped on the label, and that date? In many cases, it was never about safety. It was about selling you a replacement. This is one of the most quietly profitable systems ever created. Manufacturers figured out decades ago that if they printed a date on a product, any date, most people would respect it without question. It feels responsible, it feels safe, and it costs the average household hundreds of dollars every year in perfectly good products that end up in the trash. Today, we're going to change that. We're going through 30 common household products, things you already own and regularly replace, and explaining exactly why most of them don't expire the way you've been led to believe. Some of these will genuinely surprise you, others will make you a little frustrated when you realize how long you've been throwing money away. Either way, by the end of this video, you'll shop smarter, waste less, and stop falling for expiration dates that exist to benefit the brand, not you. Let's start from the beginning. White vinegar is one of the most chemically stable liquids you'll find in any kitchen. It's essentially a diluted acid, acetic acid, and acid doesn't go bad. Bacteria and mold cannot survive in it. There's nothing in white vinegar that breaks down, degrades, or becomes unsafe over time. The FDA does not require an expiration date on vinegar. Any date you see on the bottle is a voluntary Best Buy label the manufacturer chose to print. For practical purposes, a sealed bottle of white vinegar stored in a cool, dark place will remain fully effective for cleaning, cooking, and preserving essentially indefinitely. Once opened, it may develop a slight cloudiness or a sediment at the bottom over years. That's a harmless natural process called mother of vinegar, and it doesn't affect quality at all. Don't throw it out, it's still working perfectly. Pure vanilla extract. Real vanilla extract, not the imitation kind, but the pure extract made with alcohol, has an indefinite shelf life. The alcohol base, which is typically around 35% by volume, acts as a natural preservative. Over time, the flavor of pure vanilla extract can actually deepen and become more complex, similar to how a good spirit matures. Bottles that are decades old are still used in professional baking. The best buy date on your bottle is a marketing date, not a safety date. As long as you store it in a sealed bottle away from heat and direct light, it will keep indefinitely. One exception, imitation vanilla flavoring, which uses synthetic compounds dissolved in water or propylene glycol, can degrade faster. That's a harmless natural process called mother of vinegar, and it doesn't affect quality at all. Pencils. This one might seem obvious, but it's worth saying out loud because people do throw away pencils that have dried out or feel scratchy, when the real issue is simply that the tip needs sharpening or the pencil was stored in an excessively dry environment for a very long time. Graphite, which is the core material in a pencil, is a form of carbon. Carbon doesn't expire, it doesn't degrade over time. A pencil found in an archaeological site could theoretically still write. Colored pencils and mechanical pencil lead are similarly stable. The wooden casing may dry out over many decades, but the writing core remains functional. Don't throw away pencils because they've been sitting in a drawer. Sharpen them, they work. Soy sauce. Soy sauce is fermented and typically contains high levels of sodium, both of which make it extremely resistant to microbial growth. An unopened bottle of commercially produced soy sauce stored properly can last for years beyond its printed date without any change in safety. Once opened, it's best kept in the refrigerator, where it can remain in good condition for 2 to 3 years or more. The flavor will gradually shift over time. It may become slightly less bright, but it remains safe and entirely usable well past any label date. The reason soy sauce has a date on it at all is largely regulatory and commercial convention. Manufacturers in many countries are required to print some form of date, so they print one. It doesn't represent a hard safety boundary for a product this stable. Wooden furniture wax and beeswax polish. Pure beeswax is one of the most shelf-stable natural substances on Earth. Beeswax found in ancient Egyptian tombs thousands of years old was still chemically intact. Furniture waxes made from beeswax or carnauba wax simply don't expire. They may harden or develop a thin whitish bloom on the surface over time, but this is reversible. Warming the wax slightly, even just by placing the tin near a warm surface for a few minutes, restores it to a workable consistency. Any date you see on a tin of furniture wax is a commercial formality. The product doesn't go rancid, it doesn't grow bacteria, and it doesn't become unsafe. A 10-year-old tin of quality furniture wax is still a perfectly good tin of furniture wax. Moving on to common items you might be replacing too often. Cornstarch. Pure cornstarch is a dry powder made from the starch of corn kernels. Like most dry starches and powders, it has an indefinitely long shelf life as long as it's kept dry and sealed. Moisture is the only real enemy here. If it gets wet, it can clump or develop mold. But stored in a dry pantry, it remains fully functional for thickening and cooking for many years. The expiration date on the box is entirely precautionary. It will work exactly as it always did. Safety razor blades. A safety razor blade stored properly does not expire. Rust is the only enemy of a steel razor blade. Keep moisture away, and the blade remains sharp. A blade kept in a dry drawer for 2 years is not a health risk. Storage matters far more than time. Baking soda. This one has a functional expiration, just not the one on the box. It loses its leavening potency when it absorbs moisture and carbon dioxide from the air over time. The test. Drop a teaspoon into hot water with vinegar. If it fizzes actively, it's still good for baking. If not, it still has a long second life as an odor absorber or a gentle abrasive cleaner. Rubbing alcohol. In sealed containers, isopropyl alcohol is extremely stable. The date typically reflects the possibility that, over time, alcohol can slowly evaporate through the cap. For general household disinfecting, rubbing alcohol past its date remains fully effective if sealed. Pure honey. Honey's chemical composition makes it one of the only foods on Earth that genuinely does not expire. Archaeologists have found honey in Egyptian tombs that was over 3,000 years old and still edible. Honey may crystallize over time, which many people mistake for spoilage. It isn't, it's just solidified sugar. Gently warm the jar in a bowl of warm water and it returns to a liquid state. It has an indefinite shelf life. Stop falling for dates that benefit the brand. Trust the science and keep your money. Continuing our countdown of common items you might be replacing far too soon. Standard electrical tape, the black vinyl kind, has a genuinely long useful life when stored correctly. Vinyl electrical tape can remain flexible and adhesive for a decade or more. Wire, similarly, does not expire. As long as the rubber or plastic coating is intact, the wire is still safe to use essentially indefinitely. White rice is one of the most shelf-stable foods in existence. Unlike brown rice, it won't go rancid. Stored in an airtight container away from moisture, it can last 25 to 30 years or more. The date on your bag is almost laughably conservative. That rice will outlast most appliances in your kitchen. Rubber bands do degrade when exposed to light or heat. That's oxidation at work. But stored in a cool, dark drawer, they can remain functional for many years, past any suggested date. Pure maple syrup has a much longer shelf life than people realize, but it requires the right storage. Once opened, refrigeration is key. In the freezer, it can last almost indefinitely. If you see a small amount of surface mold, don't panic. Skim it, simmer the syrup, and it's still good. Unopened superglue has a shelf life of roughly 1 to 2 years, but this is about performance, not safety. If the tip seems hard, pierce it with a pin. The glue inside is often still liquid and active. Storing super glue in the refrigerator is the professional trick for extending its life significantly. Stop falling for dates that benefit the brand. Shop smarter, waste less, and keep your money. Pure salt, sodium chloride, is a mineral. It does not expire. It cannot go rancid or grow bacteria. Salt has been used for thousands of years as a preservative precisely because nothing grows in it. The dates on salt containers exist only due to packaging regulations. The salt itself is unchanged by time. The only caveat is iodized salt, where the iodine can degrade slightly over decades, but the salt remains safe. A container 10 years past its date is functionally identical to a new one. Keep it dry and use it forever. Granulated white sugar is another pantry staple with an effectively indefinite shelf life. Like salt, it's a pure crystalline substance with no water content to support microbial growth. The only threat is moisture, wet sugar clumps, but dry sealed sugar is fine for decades. Hardened sugar is still safe to eat, it just needs to be broken apart or dissolved. White wine and apple cider vinegars behave similarly to white vinegar. They are naturally self-preserving. The bottle you bought 2 years ago is still as useful as a new one. Acidity prevents any spoilage. You may see a cloudy sediment called the mother. It's harmless and a sign of high quality. Dried pasta is another food that significantly outlives its printed date because all moisture has been removed. Properly sealed dried pasta stored in a cool, dry place can remain safe for 2 to 5 years past the date. The texture may change very slightly over decades, but it's a cosmetic issue, not a safety one. It tastes fine. Dried beans and lentils have an extremely long shelf life. The main issue with old beans is not safety, it's texture. Beans stored for many years may not soften fully because the outer layer gradually hardens over time. This can be mitigated with longer soak and cooking times, but importantly, they won't make you sick. Properly sealed dried legumes have been safely consumed years and even decades after packaging. 5 more items you can stop worrying about. Shop smarter, waste less, and keep your money. Sewing needles and pins. Stainless steel sewing needles and pins don't expire. They can rust if exposed to moisture, but kept in a dry pin cushion or sealed tin, they remain functional indefinitely. Many tailors inherit needles from their grandmothers and use them without issue. A needle that holds its point is still useful. If it's rusted, that's the only real indicator to set it aside. Surface rust can often be removed. Matches. Matches stored in a dry, sealed environment remain functional for many years past any printed date. Moisture is the enemy here. A box exposed to humidity may become unreliable, but a sealed box stored in a dry location can remain reliable for a decade or more. Waterproof containers exist because moisture, not time, is the factor that determines usability. Powdered laundry detergent. Liquid detergent degrades, but powdered detergent is far more stable. As long as it's kept dry and sealed, it can retain its cleaning effectiveness for years past the printed date. You may notice some clumping from moisture. Break it apart, and it will still dissolve and clean effectively. Petroleum jelly. Pure petroleum jelly is a byproduct of petroleum refining. It's a stable, inert semi-solid. It does not expire in any meaningful sense. It remains chemically stable for decades. Historical records show that manufacturers originally marketed the product on the basis of its permanence and stability. An old jar that smells neutral and shows no visible contamination is entirely fine to use. Activated charcoal, used for filtration and first aid, it remains effective essentially indefinitely. Its effectiveness depends on the pores in its structure, remaining available to trap particles. Moisture and airborne contaminants can fill those pores, which is why sealed, airtight storage matters. But activated charcoal that has been kept sealed remains as effective as the day it was made. Cast iron cookware. Cast iron doesn't expire, corrode in normal conditions, or wear out. The seasoning, the polymerized oil coating, can be stripped, but it can always be reapplied. Skillets 100 years old are still in regular use in homes around the world. The pan itself doesn't expire. Even heavy rust can be removed with elbow grease, a salt scrub, and oil. Use it for a lifetime. Shop smarter, waste less, and keep your money. The synthetic truth is out. It's time to stop falling for the dates. Instant coffee in a sealed, airtight container lasts far longer than its printed date suggests. The freeze-drying process removes nearly all moisture, making it inhospitable to microbial growth. The flavor will gradually diminish over the years, but it remains safe and perfectly acceptable. Ground coffee and beans have much shorter lives, but instant coffee is a different animal entirely. Over-the-counter medications. A note of caution. This is the one category where we want to be genuinely careful. A U.S. military study found that 90% of medications tested were still effective an average of 15 years past their expiration dates. That said, for critical medications, heart medication, or prescription drugs, you should always follow professional guidance. Always use your judgment and check whether the medication looks, smells, or feels different from when you bought it. Glass containers and mason jars. Glass doesn't expire. It has an essentially indefinite lifespan. The only components that can degrade are the lids, specifically the rubber sealing compound, which can become brittle. But the glass jars themselves, cleaned and stored properly, will outlast nearly everything else in your home. The products that truly last, salt, honey, vinegar, and rice, are chemically simple, dry, or acidic. Expiration dates on them exist due to regulations or because brands found it increased repurchase rates. This doesn't mean all dates are useless. Fresh food and raw meat have genuine safety concerns. Start small. Go through your pantry this week. Check the honey, the salt, and the vinegar. That's money back in your pocket and waste out of your bin. Now you know.